This is my review of Assassination Classroom. Okay, so this episode's main focus is to show Itona fitting into Class 3E and how he just kind of naturally becomes a regular member of the class. And during this episode, we actually find out a small but very crucial piece of lore regarding Korosensei. So it starts off with Class 3E prepping for midterms, as it turns out midterms are right around the corner again, and they need to be prepared for that since midterms did kind of kick their ass, and obviously they beat Gakashu last time for several of his top spots, so they need to and actually managed to make it to the island getaway because they actually did well on their midterms. So because of that, they're actually been prepping, since it's obvious that Gakuho, Asano, and Gakashu are going to be playing something else. And indeed they are. We find that out at the beginning of the episode, at the end of the episode, but they are playing something, but they're actually, and as an end result, Korosensei is actually trying to get everybody's grades up because of finals, since some people didn't do all that well. And at the end of the day, he leaves to go get his paycheck and then go buy some crabs with it, because as he openly admits to the rest of the class, he's been craving crabs lately, and he feels like that's an appropriate thing to be spending his next paycheck on. And with that, he goes out the window and leaves. At which point they begin talking about how much Korosensei has been pushing them to actually study. And namely that the boys have been prepping with Korosensei, and as we later find out, the girls have been prepping with Irina, so that they can actually be tutored in the best environments they can, and go on to actually kick ass at the midterms. At which point they notice Itona is working on something at his desk, and Nagisa asks him what indeed it is. And as it turns out, and this is actually pretty nutty, because it's something that you would expect from Itona, but also something that just kind of sounds completely random without that context, is that he built a tank. I kid you not, he straight up built a remote controlled RC tank, and is planning to use it to assassinate Korosensei, and pointing out that he not only does he feel like he's taking a little bit harder than everybody else, because he realizes that he's working a little bit harder in the midterms, even though he's a very smart person, and that Korosensei in particular rubbed him the wrong way. He decided that he's going to work hard to actually assassinate Korosensei with what his gifts are. As pointing out by Terasaga, who he openly admits he just kind of refers to him as the idiot, which is kind of funny. As he admits he actually took Terasaga's lesson to heart, that it doesn't matter how many times it takes, as long as he gets him once. And case in point, he finishes the tank, and it's actually pretty impressive. It's very precise, not very loud due to the nature of how it's supposed to be silent enough to sneak up on Korosensei, and it's also has very pinpoint precision. Case in point, he's able to accurately shoot 3 cans that he set up at the back of the room, and is able to just snipe them with this tank. And the guys admit it's actually pretty impressive, and decide that they're going to help Itona actually assassinate Korosensei, and they have the tank move out and set up and they use it to set up a training course. But then they find out that they can actually use this to look up the girls' skirts, and that's kind of where this first half of the episode just kind of goes. The guys are all pumped up that Itona has built a tank to actually assassinate Korosensei, but as I pointed out, they also ask him where he's actually going to use it to actually assassinate Korosensei, and he openly admits Korosensei, as it turns out, only has one weakness. Well, one true weakness. He has a whole bunch of others that can either slow him down or limit his movements in some way, but his one true weakness is his heart. As it turns out, it doesn't matter how many weaknesses you pile on top of him. If you can't hit him in a direct shot to his heart, you're never going to be able to kill him. And they use that to their advantage. they decide that they're going to use that to pinpoint precision, knowing full well that because Itona's valuable information, since he was kind of, an experiment to create a second Korosensei, or at least a prototype for that naturally he would know all the ins and outs on how to actually kill Korosensei, and they're proud of that. But then back to the whole thing where they accidentally find out that they can actually use it to peek at the girl's underwear. They go out to test the training course, and then they find out that they can actually use Itona's tank to look up the girl's skirts. So they all contribute their different things to make sure that the tank is at its best and can actually do what they think is going to be a good job. Although Nagisa openly admits that he doesn't feel like it's actually going to work out very well for them, pointing out that was actually not what the idea was intended to be, and that they weren't actually supposed to use that to actually look up the girl's skirts. Although nobody actually pays attention to him, they just kind of get so hyper focused, and they even ask Ritsu, who unknowingly is helping guys be peeping toms. They ask her to create lens distortion to create an algorithm that corrects for lens distortion, pointing out that they can modify the lens, but they can also use it to eliminate fisheye, and they have to have her do that. So she does that for basically the rest of the episode, or at least the first half of the episode. And also when they find out it can't really handle steps well, Yoshida actually offers to put on some suspension so that it can actually handle stairs, and then a whole bunch of other guys begin to contribute, and then one by one it becomes a much bigger project until Takabayashi realizes that it actually needs a name, and they ask Itona to name it, pointing out that it's his tank and it's only fair. And Itona begins to mull it over and remembers recalls back to when he had the tentacles equipped, or when he had the tentacles bound to his scalp, that the tentacles actually apparently are sentient and are able to ask people what they want to be. And he stated that he wanted to be strong. And sure enough, it basically consumed his entire waking thought until he was actually able to let that go. And he also remembers that his name meant to weave. So, and that's what he decides to call it. He decides to name it after himself because Itona means to weave. So he's happy with that. But in any case, the next morning they proceed to take it out for a test drive, and it gets destroyed by a rat, or I believe. I'm not entirely sure what the rodent is. All I know, it gets taken out by a mongoose or something. I'm not entirely sure what the animal was. But it gets taken, but they go and take it out for a test drive. It's now has a new camo paint job. It has suspension on it, so it can handle stairs, and it's the best it can be, or at least for now. They go take it out, and it gets destroyed by a rodent. So they bring it back. To the classroom and scare it off, and remark that it was a dud, and that they're most likely going to have to go back to the drawing board. And Itona agrees, remarking that Itona 1 was a bit of a failure, but that with work they can actually improve it to become the best it can be, and that they'll keep spinning, as he puts it, until they can actually come up with a good idea for it. And then Okajima just kind of foolishly points out that once they get it out, they'll be looking up panties by March. Which the girls overhear, and then one by one Itona rats out Okajima, and then it just kind of becomes a domino effect, and by virtue of ratting out the one guy, he ratted out the entire group. And then Karma shows up, wondering what exactly is going on, and Nagisa explains to him what exactly actually happened. At which point Itona asks Karma where the best places to go and ditch class today are, and pointing out that he needs to make himself scarce. And Karma decides to show him, and they begin to hang out. This first half actually just showcases how quickly Itona is able to grow in, since perviness and skeeziness actually wound up making Itona popular. I mean that's what happened, and obviously that was going to be a thing, but it's clear that was going to happen. But in case everybody shows back up in case after a while, or presumably the next day, everybody finds out what Itona's given name means to weave, and everybody begins to point out that that's actually a pretty cool name. But one student, Masayoshi Kira, he hasn't been in an episode yet, so I'm picturing him here. But Masayoshi openly admits that he's not entirely a fan of his name, since, yeah, as it turns out, he has two parents who are both in law enforcement, so his name basically means justice. And if you guys watched my Samurai Flamenco review, then you guys know that I already knew this information. Masayoshi means justice if written out the right way. Masayoshi isn't really a fan of his name because he feels like his parents just kind of set him into a defined box, and that's what he was supposed to be. And Karara openly agrees to that, pointing out that she's probably one of the scariest people in the entire class, and yet she has a name like a dainty little princess, as she puts it. So as she points out, her family doesn't always have the best name at hand. And Karma openly agrees that he feels like people should be ashamed of that it feels so weird having people be ashamed of their names. And considering his name is Karma, people are openly a little bit surprised at that he has that kind of remark. But he openly admits that Karma is actually a pretty cool name, which, yeah. At which point Korosensei butts in, pointing out that he's a little bit dissatisfied by his name, pointing out that specifically Irina and Karasuma, but not everybody calls him by his name, and he wants more people to actually call him by it, and he feels like, and as Irina admits, it's because they're not children, but they openly admit that they don't call him that because they don't want to feel stupid. So they just call him that guy and the octopus. That's what they refer to him as, so that they don't feel stupid and childish. At which point Korosensei decides to propose a little bit of a game. They're going to give everybody code names based on their preferences, based on what everybody thinks would fit each student best. And they're going to just kind of put them into a box, they're going to shuffle them around, and then Korosensei is just going to pick a name for each and every single person, including the adults, and they're going to use their codenames for the rest of the day until they reach the final period and get dismissed. And sure enough, we find out what those codenames are. Some of them are about what you expect. For example, Kaide's name is Forever Flat, which she openly admits later in the episode she's not particularly happy with. And openly admits that everybody just kind of has to live with their nicknames. So, or at least their codenames. So the idea behind the codenames is that they're supposed to they're going to use them in PE as an assassination attempt at Karasuma, and they actually do manage to work. They actually draw Karasuma into a trap where he's shot by Chiba, he's shot by Jaime, who then points out that and Karasuma just points out to him that if he gives away his position and is always on guard, then he's never going to assassinate him. But Jaime points out that he wasn't trying to assassinate him, and that Masayoshi is actually going to assassinate him, and then Masayoshi jumps down from the trees and actually shoots him. At which point everybody voices concern for their names, pointing out that they're not entirely happy with them. Again, as I pointed out, Kaede is specifically very upset that her nickname is Forever Flat because, yes, she's we've established this. She's very self-conscious about the fact that she isn't as well endowed as any other girls, and even some of the guys. She's flatter than some of the guys in the classroom. I will openly admit that, but she's very upset about the fact that became her nickname. So yeah. But in any case, as everybody voices their concerns with their code names, Masayoshi in particular pointing out that his nickname was literally just his name. Korosensei reveals his beliefs behind names, that that's not so much what the names are and what their parents give them, but rather what they do with those names once they're given to them. And that they can actually make the definition of what those names are, and openly admits that if Masayoshi doesn't like his name, he can always go in for a name change and change it. But as he points out, you should probably wait until after the assassination, because and by Korosensei's own admission, how cool would it be if he got front page newspaper on the front page on the newspaper for killing Korosensei, and it just says his name is Justice. That would be, and he openly admits that would be actually pretty cool, and Masayoshi openly admits that would actually be pretty cool. So he decides that he's going to keep his name, at least for now. At which point they realize that Itona has actually fit in a lot better. With Itona calling himself having been gone by picture graduate school graduate. So he's clearly not happy with his name, but he decides that now that they're done for the day, he might as well go home. So he decides to go with Jurassic and his crew back to eat some ramen, which he openly admits he doesn't like, but he decides, hey, it's with my friend, so I might as well. But in any case, Nagisa's overall it just takes in the whole day and just points out that Itona has just kind of come into his own since joining Class 3E. In the span of a day, I should admit. They openly admit that Itona is pretty much imprinted on the rest of the class in the span of a day and a half. So it's actually pretty impressive how quickly he's managed to endear himself to the rest of the class, and can't help but admire that their class has gotten bigger, and that now they've all made a new friend. It then cuts to Gakuho Sano and his son Gakushu discussing their plan for midterms. And Gakuho openly asks Gakushu if he's going to be working harder to actually keep everybody in line, pointing out that he won't accept slackers this time around. And Gakushu openly admits that yes, that he rules with an iron fist, and that he's not going to let anybody slack this time around to keep Class 3E from actually, doing well at midterms again. Gakuho is impressed, but openly admits that he feels that Gakushu's leadership role has been diminished somewhat by the fact that he let Class 3E go to the island in Okinawa. So he's clearly a little bit disappointed in his son, pointing out that it doesn't really matter if he slips or not, as long as he does try to be a bit more of a leader going forward. And Gakushu openly admits that he's going to try harder, and that he's not going to let them win again. So yeah, it's clear from this scene that I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's clear from this scene that Gakuho and Gakushu, we already knew that their relationship was a little bit at odds, but it seems to be more so after midterms have come along. So, and also specifically since Gakushu has been working hard to actually make sure that that Class 3E doesn't, do well at midterms again. That's going to be a bit of a problem going forward if they can't indeed do anything with that. But in any case, it's clear that they're going to be working hard for midterms. But at the very least, they now have Itona, and Itona's a complete wild card to them, so there's no real telling how well he's going to do. But I think we can foreshadow that he's probably going to do well on midterms, considering the fact that he literally made a tank out of foam parts. So, yeah, I think Itona's probably going to be covered, at least academic-wise, since he basically built himself a remote control tank out of nothing. And also, more importantly, this episode actually does reveal a couple of plot points about Korosensei, namely that the tentacles are apparently sentient and kind of bestow abilities to people based on what they ask, which begs the question as to what Korosensei asked for to become Korosensei, and also that Korosensei has one true weakness, and that all the other weaknesses don't matter because they all enable them to actually hit him in this one weakness. So yeah, the only way to kill Korosensei is directly into his heart. So they're gonna have to figure out how to do that, but I get the feeling that once they actually figure that out, they're actually going to be able to kill Korosensei once and for all. But for the time being, that's gonna do it for my review of Assassination Classroom. What do you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks, and I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and as the next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!